Welcome to our presentation. This is lesson 5 or lesson 6 for the user interface design, game user interface design. So we are talking the design process, the user interface design process. I think these are the steps you can see on the screen. We already discussed the gameplay, define the gameplay mode first. Now we will start from the choosing a screen layout. So here we will start a little bit of advertisement, just etc.net, software development and consulting service, university.justetc.org, online and offline training, mall.justetc.org, online shop, computer.justetc.net, short notes and training videos on programming and IT. Now, so when you are done with defining your gameplay modes and also maybe doing a basic thinking about the user interface elements, just like you thought the visual elements as we have discussed here, yeah, you can start thinking about choosing a general screen layout for your game. So when you're done with the primary gameplay mode, if it is thought out and you have defined the camera model for your game and also the interaction model for your game, you can choose some general screen layout. So you have to think about the main view. I think the first view or the main view that the player will see, how much it will include, how much of screen space it will include. Will it be a short one, or it will be throughout the entire screen, or it will be just a window, or what it will be. So you have to define on this. So main view is usually the largest largest screen of the game. So you have to think if it will occupy a subset or it will window or full screen, whatever. Now you have to make balance between the main view and the different feedback elements just to show information to the user or to take command from the player. And on screen control you have to balance how much space the main view will take and how much space the controls will take. In console games and computer games it's not really a big issue, but if you go for handheld devices, it's really a challenge, especially for mobile phones when the screen sizes those are not also consistent or standardized. Now after you have chosen the screen layout, you have to think about what the player needs to know, and you have to provide mechanisms or controls or implement to show those things to the user, to let the player know about what he needs to know. So apart from the current view of the game world, the main view, you also need to show to the user, to the player, what critical resources does he need to be aware of all times. What's the best way to make that information available to him through audio, video, visual element? If visual element, what should be the shape, size, color, and where to place them on those things. And also what data from the core mechanics you want to show to the player. You have to decide and also decide on how to, and maybe think about the corresponding controls or user interface elements. You have to choose the feedback elements most suited to display those data. I think we mean the previous data. What warning the player needs to give in at different points of the game. And your game may need a new type of feedback element. It can be some unique program nobody did before. You are trying to make a unique game, so your game may need some unique element, so you have to design those elements as well. Then you have to think about or allow the user to do what he or she wants to do. To devise a control mechanism, define every action that the player can take that affects the game, and you need to check I think our previous slides, what the player wants to do: move, look around, construct something, demolish something, interact with other players, start conversation with other players. If those actions are appropriate for your game as well, maybe you can also allow those actions in your game. Okay, and then as part of user interface design, you also have to design those shell menus. What are shell menus? It usually comes before the game starts, game action starts, or after the gameplay ends. Those shell menus, it allows the user player to start, configure the game, also to manage the operation of the game before and after the gameplay. Shell menus also should allow the player to configure the video and audio settings for the game, also allow to control the game controls, allow to save and load games, and also allow to shut down the games. Players should not spend much time in shell menu when you are starting the game, so you should not force them to spend much time. Maybe players are more willing to jump into the game action, not with your shell menu. You have to design it this way, or maybe you can also provide some sort of shortcut keys in the gameplay mode also, that also involves the functionality with the shell menu thing, so that they don't have to go back and forth. And sometimes it is seen that many games, even many good games, include ugly shell menus. Sometimes people think, okay, this can wait until the end, but ultimately they don't get the time to make it better. But you should remember that players see shell menus first, so it's better that you make them look good aesthetically, and also functionally they should be good. Now, how to manage the complexity of the user interface? Yeah, sometimes many users may find the user interface of the game too complex, then they may not keep their interest to play the game. So there are two basic ways we can simplify the complexity of the user interface. One is abstraction and another is the automation. What is the abstraction? I think it's just it's not the real object. Let's say in your game objects, you don't represent the real object exactly as it is in the real world, real physical world, but you just highlight the important aspects of that particular game. For example, in car racing game, we usually do not simulate the fuel consumption or the fuel level. We usually allow the player to play without even thinking about the fuel consumption. So in a real car, you must have to be aware of the fuel. But through abstraction, we have removed the concept of fuel consumption in racing games. So the player does not have to bother much with fuel consumption, and it may not be something very important. And this way, we are simplifying the complexity and making the gameplay more enjoyable. Another concept is automation. I think sometimes some controls, the computer can take care of those controls other than forcing or letting the user to take control. But we know that player wants to be in charge of the game. Yeah, for sure, but these are the type of controls that the player usually don't bother with or don't relevant for the game. And sometimes it can happen, you can give the player the option either to select a automatic control or manual control. Maybe in multiplayer car racing game, you can by default you can select the automatic steering of the car he has selected, or you can give the option to select the manual steering. It can happen, maybe you can make the player who will take the manual steering, and if they can steer it well, maybe you should give some plus points to those rather than who have selected automatic. Maybe you can make those automatic steering a little inefficient, so that is still the player who has taken the manual mode are balanced with the automated mode selected. So the main concept is the computer itself is doing some automation of the control, So